You're watching The Sports Objective, the podcast for Pirates. You're watching Pirate Breakdown with Sutton Young. Join Sutton every Wednesday night on The Sports Objective as he talks East Carolina football. Here's Sutton.
And welcome into Pirate Breakdown. Hope y'all are having a great week. I am Sutton Young, joined tonight by Memphis Flyer and Memphis Magazine's own Frank Murtaugh. Frank, how you doing, man?
Great, Sutton. Happy to be with you. Thanks.
Happy to be with you as well. Great to have someone from Memphis land over in here. Certainly a big game. Last year, we know how big of a game it was for ECU when they faced off against your Tigers. It was the first time that they had clinched bowl eligibility since 2014. And Frank, it just seems like Memphis is really hungry in this game. It was a close game last year, one that many people involved with the Memphis program thought that they should have won. So you definitely have to assume that they're going to come in hungry.
Yeah, Sutton, motivation is not going to be a problem for the Tigers this week. This is a group that is still, I believe, reeling from what happened last Friday night here in Memphis at Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium, as it's known now. The collapse against Houston was a hard thing to witness. Add to that, what you mentioned, a tough loss also at home last year to the Pirates, one that came down to a 2-point conversion attempt that went awry. The Tigers are going to come out there. They'll be fired up. Is it going to be the right kind of fired up? You wonder. I mean, a loss like last Friday night, I'm afraid, can linger, especially for a program trying to find its legs. So we're gonna learn a lot about Ryan Silverfield and his team come Saturday.
No doubt about it. And you mentioned that with a team trying to find on its legs. I mean, you look at ECU as well. I mean, you look at that state game and a 1-point loss for the Pirates, and then you fast forward 3 weeks, lose to frankly a horrible Navy team who have lost to FCS Delaware. It seems like for Memphis, I mean, as much as I don't want to say it, and I'm going to go ahead and say this, I think Memphis will have a pretty good shot against ECU because based off of last week with ECU, the Pirates did not look good. The offense looked like they didn't even travel. So I think it's going to be important for ECU's offense to capitalize this week. But at the same time, I think Memphis has a pretty big opportunity to shut ECU's offense down.
They've got that one common opponent, Sutton, Navy, as you mentioned, and that the loss, ECU's loss surprised me. The Tigers were able to handle the midshipmen up there just the second week of the season, and it's never fun playing that triple option, as any coach will tell you, any player who's been on the field against it. The Tigers, they were taking care of business at home, until last Friday night, and it looked like, if you had a 5-1 team right now, undefeated in the conference, you're looking at a Memphis team that would really be, vying for, a spot in that conference championship game, which is every team's first goal in the league, is to get to the conference title game. Now with a loss hung on them, it's no 2-loss team is going to play in that game. So there's no margin for error for Memphis. East Carolina's, fighting uphill, as you mentioned, with losing to Tulane last week. It's going to be an interesting game. Two programs that are familiar with each other. I wrote in my column this week that, Memphis has a problem in not having a quote unquote rivalry game each year. And it's not Ole Miss, it's not Mississippi State, the SEC teams that come in, periodically and usually, beat up on the Tigers. It's not that. But when you're trying to find a program that is familiar to Memphis, that has gone back and forth, the Pirates actually, on the edge in the series. East Carolina's a rivalry game, and it's becoming that. And next year when the league transitions, it'll be all the more so. Yeah, it's a healthy game for the AAC. Let me put it that way. For two teams, needing to find traction, and they tend to make for good football games.
No doubt about it. And something that you mentioned too, I mean, as the conference moves into this new era with these Conference USA teams, I was saying on a previous week's show that ECU and Memphis are going to be two of the big dogs in the AAC, and they're going to have to prove that the AAC is still the best non-Power 5 conference, because when you look at it now, the teams to beat usually are Cincinnati and Houston. Those are the two big ones. Those are the teams also who are going off to the Big 12. So it's going to be interesting to see who can be that new perennial power. Excuse me, UCF as well. They're also heading out. I mean, that frankly is good for both ECU and Memphis. But ECU and Memphis, I think, both have the opportunity next year and the year after to be that Cincinnati, Houston, UCF. And games like these, I mean, even if neither team makes it to the conference championship, they matter, because the face of our conference, I think, lies in the hands of us, you all in Memphis, South Florida. I mean, Temple. I mean, they're not too hot right now, and SMU.
Yeah, so that's the right spin. Honestly, Ryan Silverfield has expressed. I've asked him about this musical chairs of leagues. With these super conferences being formed. And his standard, line is that he and the Tiger staff are trying to put the program in the best light possible for whatever, suitor may come along. And for that to happen, it's precisely what you're describing. We can mourn the loss of UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, but that's done with. And, who is going to be the dominant, program in the AAC? And if the teams that emerge and can dominate the league, get in a conversation for one of those New Year's Six slots in the current system, can still be a player. But you don't want to fall into the middle tier, because it's not going to be Charlotte or North Texas or Rice that's the standard bearer in the American. It's going to need to be a Memphis, or East Carolina. SMU goes way back. That's a football proud program, just has wobbled, in the last couple of decades, but they seem to be finding their way. Fast forward a year, 2 years, 5 years, East Carolina and Memphis may be it when it comes to the AAC.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about it. And I mean, there's so many people who are making the joke of this is the CUS American. I mean, it's the old school Conference USA with new faces. I mean, as much as I hate to say it, it really is. I mean, when ECU and Memphis were in the American when the league started, I mean, I personally think that the league's presence was a lot better than it is now, and especially with really your biggest three programs in recent years departing, it really does stink for the conference. And there was this whole fight about Power Six. The American is a Power Six conference. Okay, yes, you could say that a few years ago, but unfortunately, it's hard to say that once these teams leave, and if teams like ECU, Memphis, and SMU don't compete with those big Power 5 teams, then it's going to even push that argument even further away. Yeah,
there's no question. Speaking for Memphis in particular, the program is at such a crossroads, Sutton, because they're winning, they're 4-2, but they're not drawing the kind of crowds that, a Big 12 or an ACC, whatever the Super League is, expects or requires for membership. There were 28,000 people in the stadium last Friday night for a primetime showdown with one of those big three programs that's leaving, and a rival. Houston and Memphis go way back. The week before against Temple, there were 23,000 fans in a stadium, Sutton, that seats more than 50,000. That's not a good look for Ryan Silverfield. And, the Tigers have a good team. They have playmakers that are going to be fun to watch this Saturday and in the weeks ahead. But they're just not selling tickets. Now, some of this can be a lingering effect, I believe, of the pandemic and that bizarre 2020 season we all experienced. So folks finding their way back into spectator sports, and do I want to give myself to, fall Saturdays in college football? That's a question the Memphis community is asking itself right now. And if the answer is not yes, then the Tigers, don't even need to be, pretending to be contenders for one of those big league memberships in the near future. It's a serious crossroads the Memphis program is experiencing right now.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. And frankly, for ECU, I think it's a similar state. I mean, ECU has been lucky. I mean, you most likely remember the days of Scotty Montgomery here at ECU. Frankly, 3 of the most embarrassing years of ECU football. I mean, I still remember when your Tigers hung 70 on us. It was 49-0 first half. I mean, attendance at Dowdy was the worst we had seen in 15 years. And for us, it's coming back. But in order for it to get to that elite level ECU saw in the early 2010s, 2010, 2011, 2012, I mean, frankly, you got to win. And same goes for Memphis. Both teams have to win. I look at the days of Conference USA when ECU was winning most of those games, and frankly, the Justin Fuente days of Memphis when you guys were winning consistently. And same goes for Mike Norvell. The bottom line is if these teams want to have long-term success in an age where super conferences are forming, then they need to start winning now.
Yeah, and winning big, Sutton. You know, I endured similar to what you described. Larry Porter's 2 years here, 2010, 2011. Tigers won a total of 3 games, and most of the games were over by halftime. It was really deflating, and the Liberty Bowl was empty. And then, Justin Fuente, bless him, unemployed right now. It's hard to believe, but Justin Fuente and then Mike Norvell, they not only won, they won big. You know, they beat Ole Miss, and Mike Norvell won a conference title and took the team to the Cotton Bowl, for crying out loud. 3 10-win seasons, 3, top 25 finishes. That kind of stuff is foreign to Memphis football fans. You know, this is a basketball town that tries to figure out what to do for a couple of months before the basketball season starts, but it was shifting. The landscape was moving. Ryan Silverfield worked under Norvell for 4 years, took over. He actually took over for that Cotton Bowl game, which makes him unlike any coach in the history of the sport, coaching the biggest game in the history of the program, your first time on the sideline. But then 3 months later, Sutton, he was in under pandemic conditions and trying to navigate a new world, and here with the transfer portals and NIL, Silverfield's winning. 4-2 beats 2-4, or 0-6, and we've been there. But it's one thing to win, another thing to sell that brand, sell those experiences. 3 or 4 hour experiences on your precious weekend, and right now, Sutton, you're a sports fan. At a hockey game last night, there are so many alternatives we have, so many choices. So how are you going to convince a family, students even, to spend their part of their weekend at a football game? It's a real challenge. I'm honestly glad I'm not in that seat, because I'm a writer. I'm not a salesman, and right now it's a sales job for these programs.
I mean, you look at it, money's always been part of college football, but in this day and age, I mean, money talks, and people always ask me, why isn't ECU poised to go to a bigger conference? Well, it's not all about the winning play too. I tell people all the time, if ECU was in Raleigh, they'd be in the SEC or a big-time conference. They're not, which puts more pressure on ECU to win. And for Memphis as well, like we've talked about earlier, this is prime time for the Tigers program to rack up some wins. And speaking of wins, Frank, it really seems like Memphis has the edge on Saturday. ECU, in my opinion, as much as I hate saying this, looked like they were a little identity lost on Saturday. The performance against Tulane was, frankly, one of the worst I've seen in a while. And as far as an offensive scheme for the Pirates, it's hard to say, because you've got one of our best running backs, Rajay Harris, hurt. So, frankly, Frank, what are your thoughts on Memphis's defense against ECU's offense?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, Sutton. Holton Ahlers setting all these career records. He's a prize for the league. I hope he's appreciated. The balance of the season. The Tigers have a playmaking defense this year, Sutton. They've actually allowed more yards than the offense has gained slightly, but they forced turnovers in 11 straight games. And they've got, playmakers on defense are rare. And I'll mention 3 for you. Jalen Allen up front on the line. Xavier Collins at linebacker, and then Quindell Johnson, safety. These three guys, they each have picks this season. Two of them have pick sixes. They're ball hungry, and I'm not sure that, coaches every year they say they're coaching, their players to force turnovers. I'm not sure it can be coached. I think that, players have an ability to force a fumble, punch a ball out, know when to go for an interception and when just a pass breakup will do. And the Tigers, they have 3 or 4 guys that fit that description. So I think that the defense is going to be a challenge for Mr. Ehlers. It's the matchup I'm looking most forward to seeing. The Tigers have a balanced offense, and we can talk about that too. But that defensive unit that Memphis has put together is special.
Right, and as you can see below, the Tigers, they are +9 in turnover battle as they forced 13 while only committing 4. It seems like, and I've seen this the past couple weeks, I mean, ECU's offense is like a roller coaster. And when they played South Florida, who, I mean, frankly, I would say is the worst team in our league, they put up monstrous numbers. But then you come to Tulane, looked horrible. I'll say it straight up, they looked horrible. And something else I'm going to be very interested to see is ECU's defense. And I personally think it's the best defense ECU's had since they won the conference championship in 2009. Frank, do you think that Memphis's offense will have a lot of success against ECU's defense?
Seth Hennigan's a special guy. The sophomore quarterback the Tigers have been leaning on. He was precocious in playing last year, took the starting job his first game as a true freshman. And, the Tigers split, went 6-6. He's, if anything, he's showing signs of being a more developed, veteran quarterback. I guess that'd be expected, but still just a sophomore. He's, we're 6 games in. He's only thrown 1 interception. He's managing the game well. 2 weeks ago against Temple, he managed to scramble for some important first downs. He did the same thing against Houston, actually, as they were taking their lead. And, I've come to believe that, we love seeing the 300-yard games, 3 or 4 touchdowns. But, decision-making, if you've got the right decision-maker at quarterback, you're going to win more games than you lose. And Hennigan, I think right now, he's distributing the ball well. The Tigers' running game, if Memphis had a running back that I could tell you had 650 yards here midway through the season, he'd be being celebrated in the league and beyond. Well, the Tigers have 3 guys with 220, so they're spreading the ball and using a tailback by committee, which was not Ryan Silverfield's plan going in. He really wanted to find an alpha dog, but Jevian Ducker, Asa Martin, and Brandon Thomas are the 3 guys that are sort of sharing the weight there. The Tigers will move the ball, I believe. It's I haven't seen a full East Carolina game this season, so looking at their defense will be fresh for me. But it should be a healthy matchup for the Pirates.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with you. Something ECU has really been able to do well that they frankly haven't done well in a while is contain offenses. And you look at the defense this year, and I've been telling people, like I just told you, it's the best defense I've seen in well over 10 years, and something that frankly ECU fans aren't used to because of the days of Ruffin McNeil when Lincoln Riley was the OC. ECU was just known for just putting up points. And now it kind of seems like ECU's identity right now, at least, is the defense. And another matchup I'm interested to see too, and frankly, it's an area where ECU has just struggled left and right, is special teams. I mean, obviously the end of the game last year against Memphis and ECU, overtime game, Memphis elected to go for 2. I'll say this, Frank, if ECU has any chance of winning this game, special teams has to be 100% on point.
Yeah, boy, I chuckle here because you're bringing up a sore point. I laugh to keep from crying that the Tigers, they win last Friday if it's not for special teams breakdown. They gave up a 100-yard kickoff return in the fourth quarter, And then, there was an onside kick with just a minute, 17 seconds left. If either of those plays goes the Tigers' way, they're 5-1 and on a 5-game winning streak. It's funny how that works. Numerous coaches have told me that you won't necessarily win a game with your special teams, but man, can you lose them fast. And the Tigers, as far as their special teams go, the guy to watch is Joe Doyle, their punter. He's remarkable. He's putting the ball, 55, 60 yards downfield and pinning opponents inside the 10. And he's been needed a couple of games this year. He's one year he was the special teams player of the week, I know. I hear you though. It's if special teams go sour, look out. The Tigers, I know if I haven't been to the practice field this week. I was in Chicago earlier, but I would imagine there's been some emphasis on kick returns and punt returns and what have you, and just fielding an onside kick, for crying out loud.
Certainly, in a Memphis year kicker and a Florida transfer, Chris Howard, 11-11 on field goals this year with a long of 47. I mean, frankly, I hate to say it, you can't say that about our kicker. I mean, 2 games where the final play has come down to missed field goals. I mean, the state loss was, the final actual play missed field goal, and then Navy overtime was a missed field goal. So, frankly, that's my key for the game is special teams. And I think that goes both ways. Obviously, you look at the special teams you all had last week, and frankly, special teams for ECU this year has just been a problem left and right. Frank, what's your big key for the game on Saturday?
Sutton, I would look at the turnovers. It's the oldest cliche in football, but if the Tigers can continue that turnover streak, gain an extra possession or two, I think they'll prevail. If the Pirate defense hits them in the mouth and can rattle Seth, that second or third interception this season for him, it can go the other way. Talking with you especially, I think it's a matchup that will help shape a season for one of these programs or maybe both of them.
No doubt about it. And I said last week on the show that if ECU lost to both Tulane and Memphis, you can forget about bowl eligibility for the Pirates. I think in you all's case, you have a little bit more of a luxury. I personally think Memphis will make a bowl. I do. Right now, I do not think ECU is primed to make a bowl. As far as the game tomorrow, prediction for me, I hate doing it. I love ECU more than anybody, but I have to be honest. And if I'm going to be honest, like you mentioned early in the show, the loss to Houston last week was, it was big for Memphis. And I certainly think that the Tigers are hungry. And I could easily see this being a 2-score game. I'm going to go 34-23. I do think Memphis is going to win. And I think special teams will be a problem again for ECU. And I think Memphis's offense is going to light it up early and will be able to cushion that late in the game. Frank, what's your score, man?
Well, I wish I could go 2 directions because, as I said, one of 2 Memphis teams is going to show up. The one that is still rattled by what happened last Friday, or one that's motivated to prove that that's not the team they are. I'm going to assume the latter is going to show up, and I'm not sure they're going to score as many points. I think the defenses may stand up and have a say in this affair. I guess I'd go with Memphis 24-17. But a game that's, played down to the fourth quarter. And once again, I think an extra possession for one team or the other will probably swing it.
It's a good deal, man. I like that prediction. I could see it going that way. Who knows? Maybe these throwback uniforms ECU is wearing could be the difference. But, I as much as I love what the team's wearing, it's not about that. It's about the play. And I think Memphis is going to be ready to go. And at the same time, I think ECU has a sour taste in their mouth too. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Frank, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for the time. It's going to be a great game on Saturday.
It's great being with you, Sutton. I appreciate you having me. Looking forward to the ball game.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining me as well. And make sure to watch the game at 7:30. It's homecoming too. So if you're heading out to the game, go to the parade, have some barbecue, enjoy the tailgate, and enjoy a great team with 2 teams that are hungry to prove doubters wrong. We will see you next week here on Pirate Breakdown. Until then, have a great night.